Welcome, I'm Maciej, and I'll give a brief overview of a paper that we recently got published at ACMCUR called Demystifying Graph Databases. Graph databases are a class of systems in which we process big graph datasets, and we care about these systems because they are used in numerous parts of science, industry, and business. For example, in social sciences, engineering, and numerous others, ranging from biology via cybersecurity up to web graph analysis. In our paper, we describe in depth three fundamental parts of aspects of these systems: data models, workloads, and system design. In data models, we focus on one hand, the labeled property graph, in short LPG, in which, in addition to the basic graph structure that we use to model the given entities and relationships, we also use labels that we can attach in different configurations to vertices and edges to provide ways to categorize these parts of the dataset, as well as properties, which are key value pairs that we can attach to edges and to vertices to further describe the data. Besides the LPG graph data model, we also focus on the RDF data model, in which we model a graph with triples that consist of subjects, predicates, and objects. For example, we can use such a triple to model the connection between a vertex to an edge, or the fact that a given publication modeled by a vertex has a given abstract. In the paper, we also study and discuss differences between these two data models, as well as the ways of translating one into the other. Besides the data models, we also describe major workloads. These workloads, the major workloads that we have in these systems are, on one hand, the so-called online transactional processing, in short OLTP, in which we deal with different types of graph accesses that can be collectively described as CRUD accesses, namely create, read, update, and delete different parts of the graph. On the other hand, we also describe online analytical processing, in short OLAP, with workloads such as running PageRank or graph traversal, or maybe training graph neural networks connected to this graph database. We also categorize these graph database workloads with respect to their scopes, namely how large or what is the scope of the underlying graph that is being processed. Here we range from these workloads can range from single vertex and query workloads up to whole graph query workloads. And finally, we also describe system design. Here we provide a taxonomy of graph databases with respect to their system designs. And we, at the high level, we categorize these systems using three classes of categories. On one hand, we identify so-called system backends. What is the type of the system backend used in a given graph database? We also describe data organization aspects and query execution aspects. In the first part, in the system backends, we identify several fundamental ways in which we can construct the backend of a given graph database. These can be things like object-oriented data DBMS, or for example, using column or row, RDBMS as the backend for a graph database, but also others like data hubs, native graph stores, wide column stores, key value stores, document stores, or tuple stores, or other types of native graph stores. So they can be essentially based on either the LPG. So native graph stores can be based on either the LPG or the RDF data model. The other part of taxonomy deals with data organization. Here we identify aspects of the given system design, such as what is a used representation, what is a used graph data model, what are different, do we have different optimizations applied in a given data organization of a given graph system, for example, using edge records, linking records, or using lightweight edges. Other aspects are aspects are data distribution, data sharding, data replication, and also we have aspects related to how do we structure indexing structures? How do we build indexing structures in these systems? And the final class of aspects in the taxonomy are those related to the query execution. Here we have criteria or ways to execute queries, related to, for instance, can we run queries concurrently? Can we parallelize a single query? To what extent we support ACID in a given graph database? What languages do we use as query languages? And what queries do we support? So these are the things we deal with in terms of query execution. In all of these aspects, we try to really focus on the details of how a given aspect is being treated, is being implemented, designed. So, for example, in the indexing structures, we identify different ways in which different data structures, fundamental data structures that are used to build indexes. And finally, we analyze a broad landscape of specific graph database systems, and we try to describe these systems with respect to our taxonomy and provide overviews that can guide developers or system designers to select the given graph database that is more suited for their needs. We also have some related papers that to this whole landscape. On one hand, we provide a ready design of a graph database that we call the graph database interface, which we illustrate is capable of scaling to hundreds of thousands of cores for both transactional and analytical graph workloads. It's based on a concept called GDI, Graph Database Interface Standard, which prescribes building blocks for different graph databases. We also have works related to empowering graph databases with neural capabilities and related work on streaming and dynamic graph processing frameworks.